Some new discoveries from the DOGE department. No shocker here. More billions and billions and trillions found that are impossible to trace.
When you look at the way that our government has been operating, it's astounding, really, that the United States is still standing in the way that we are, because this $4.7 trillion in Treasury payments, basically when an agency submits a request for a payment and the Treasury cuts the check, they were not putting the Treasury account symbol in the coding field so they know what that money is for. So they're just cutting checks at the request of agencies and these things. Much of this is appropriated funds or things that were supposed to be spent, as far as we know. But the problem is they weren't coding it when they're cutting the checks. So you have agencies that have a budget, and then you have the Treasury Department that cuts the check for them. And it's impossible to reconcile what payment goes with what line item. If you were a small business and you were not dealing with $4.7 trillion, let's just say $47,000, a small business, you're operating, and you weren't able to reconcile what checks you were writing for what, you know who's knocking on your door? Some of those 87,000 IRS agents that the Biden administration hired.
Does it sound shocking when the quote is just, as of Saturday, it's now a required field, increasing insight into where the money's actually going? Good work. It's funny to me that that's somehow controversial.
Right. This is really a mandate from the people. This was one of the main reasons that President Trump got reelected, among many. But the people were tired of seeing their hard-earned money that was taxed by the government going to programs that they knew were ridiculous, that they knew there was wasteful spending. I don't think we knew to the degree of which there's definitely corruption within the government in some areas. There's definitely waste, fraud, and abuse. But I would say this new category that we're looking at is just incompetence. The fact that the Treasury is just cutting checks but not coding with a Treasury account symbol where these payments correspond with line items, basic, simple accounting practices that they require the American people to do it. Why isn't the government required until now to follow those same practices when they're answering to us? That's our money that they are spending. It's your tax dollars. But then you have to ask, as Logan said, how do we get involved? How can we support this? Other than many people that already voiced their support with their vote last November, this is now being attacked by states attorneys general, by outside groups, are finding any way that they can put a stop to DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency.
You may have seen the reports of the national parks had 1,000 cuts. Now, 1,000 cuts, by the way, to the National Park Service is only a very small percentage amount of people that work there. And most of these were people either that jobs were doubled up or they again were in their provisional basis and it wasn't felt necessary. And then also a lot of them were then switched over to seasonal because it felt that these jobs were not necessary as full-time work. Joe, so there's a lot that goes into this more than just people are getting fired. And it's not that we don't have heart for people getting fired and losing their jobs and losing their benefits. Look, it's not their fault. They took a job. However, to be good with your money, to spend your money wisely, how many times have you or a lot of our listeners gone through layoffs in your business? And you're not sitting there going, oh man, I mean, yes, you're mad at your employer probably for the layoffs, but sometimes you know that the business can't survive. It's not dissimilar to what's happening in America. You have to be able to survive. And to do that, sometimes these cuts need to be made. And when they get out of control, when you have something like $4.7 trillion that you can't even account for, that's where a checks and balances actually gets to come in and do their job. The legal process that's going ahead with it. And Will, there are some familiar voices, some familiar names to a lot of our listeners in terms of who the judge is that's going to be making potentially this decision and maybe going in a very surprising way.
That's right. So last week we talked about the 4 that we had already filed in.
Yes.
There's another case that is before the D.C. District Court, and this is states' attorneys general that are bringing a lawsuit trying to stop DOGE from
You've probably seen that
cutting,
in the headline.
right.
You've probably seen the headline of, oh, don't worry, the rogue judges are going to take care of this that think they're above the law.
That's right. So this one, and I will say the ACLJ is preparing to engage this one as well. This would be the fifth that we have engaged in just shy of a week and a half whenever that one is filed. But Professor Hutchison, this name of this judge, as they had preliminary arguments yesterday or hearing on whether or not this judge would issue a temporary restraining order trying to stop DOGE from their cuts and firing of employees, is one we've heard before. It's Judge Chutkan, who oversaw the January 6th case from Jack Smith. And Professor Hutchison, what have we heard from Judge Chutkan thus far?
Judge Chutkan seems like she is prepared to follow the Constitution. As you explicated earlier, Will, the President of the United States is a unitary executive under Article 2 of the Constitution. And now we have 14 states who are claiming that the president lacks the authority to provide oversight and perhaps to fire federal employees. The predicate to their claim is they must show irreparable harm, and this particular judge does not believe that they can muster sufficient evidence in support of their claim. And at least on a preliminary basis, she is inclined to basically dismiss the temporary restraining order request by the 14 states. So it's very surprising.
Yeah, maybe we actually are seeing a judge step in, one that we knew of, and say, hey, it's not all political. It's not all party line. There is a rule of law here, and we're not just going to go ahead and go with it because, the internet sphere on Threads decides, the judges need to take control of this.
This is now being attacked by states, by states' attorneys general, by outside groups, are finding any way that they can put a stop to DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. And we talked last week that we filed 4 amicus briefs in court supporting the government and DOGE and their being able to continue this work while outside parties are trying to stop it. Now, what does that mean? When the ACLJ files an amicus brief, we have our skilled expert lawyers write the brief and file it in the appropriate case. Those then get read by the judge. They get read by the other parties and see the legal arguments that we're making. And what legal arguments are we making in these cases? That the President of the United States is a unitary executive. He is the branch of government. The President is, in and of himself, a branch of government. What the left has been trying to do, and successfully in many ways for decades, is to isolate the bureaucracies, the agencies that fall under the president's purview as somehow independent of his oversight. And they're using Congress to make laws to try to hamper him. That's not an oversight role of Congress. That's them impeding the function of a co-equal branch of government. And so when they file and say, look, this violates things like Administrative Procedures Act, or this isn't done the way that we think as Congress it should have been done, they're not allowing the president to have oversight of agencies under his direct oversight. And so that's what we're arguing. Our attorneys are experts in constitutional law, but also because of work over the past 8 years in presidential power. So when we make an argument before the court, it's heard and it's looked at very seriously. Many times our briefs get cited in the opinions by judges because of the compelling arguments we make. We may not be directly representing President Trump in this case, or DOGE, or one of the states, but we have the ability to represent you before this court. And we are already have filed in 4 different cases. So when you give to the ACLJ, you support that work. And we don't charge our clients for that work. When we write and give a legal argument, you are helping make a path forward for a better America and making sure that we operate inside the constitutional framework that our founders set up.